I potentially ruined his life for telling me to kill myself. I work for a company that does tech support. We receive calls for help, we try to help. This guy called up asking for help to remove a piece of software that required administrator rights. Pretty standard, nothing special. However, the computer he was requesting help with was his own personal computer. Obviously, we don't have any access or control over random people's computers. I have zero way I can help him without the admin account, and he said he doesn't know the account. The software was some kind of parental management software that restricts him from doing things. This guy is in his early 20s. I know this because we can see the details of the people that call us on our system. So kind of hilarious, he has this software installed. Anyway, after I tell him that I cannot help him, he ends up telling me that I work for a trash company and that I should kill myself. I don't even respond and he hangs up the phone. Now obviously the calls are recorded and I'm not going to just ignore what just happened. I tell my manager the story. He listens to the phone call. My manager then calls the liaison for the company he called from. They find out that this guy is an intern at the company. He now no longer works for the company. During the call, they decide to get the CEO on the phone and tell him what happened. Shortly after that call, the CEO lets us know that he called the university that the guy is currently going to. The university has now dropped him from all his classes. This guy has now lost his intern job and lost his placement in university, all because he told me to kill myself on the phone. I imagine this is a man-child that's so used to saying things like that on video games and on Reddit that he just has no filter. Yep. Exactly how he sounded. He sounded like the kids I hear when playing COD and Halo and various online games. It just came out of him so naturally, like he's said it many times before. Never mess with healthcare workers. So I work in an area in our hospital called daycare surgery. This is where people come for surgery and they get discharged the same day, so like hip knee replacements, broken wrists etc. I'm a care aide in this department so I get to do all the busy work and also some prep work like shaves. Quite often I do hernia repair shaves, and those tend to be located in the groin area or lower abdomen. I do my best to provide decency, and so before I lift of their hospital gown to get to the shave area, I bring a towel up over the nethers and then bring up the gown. Gives the patient some privacy decency and I don't have to see their junk. This happens more often than not that when I pull the blanket back, which I do first, then the towel etc., the guy is sitting there with his junk already flapping in the wind. This is not necessary, I know my nurses do not instruct this to happen, this is them wanting to have their junk looked at. I'm pretty sure because if they were thinking they're being helpful then the gown would be pulled up away from the area I need to shave as well. It is not. So I still have to move the gown to get to where I need it. Petty revenge part. I shave an extra larger patch of hair off when they do this, so that when the hair grows back, they have a larger area that will be itchy from the hair growing back. It's not much, but it makes me feel little better for being forced to see what is usually quite an old and not so great looking penis. I worked in day surgery for 4 years, and the amount of men who have their junk hanging out is laughable. I had one guy spread his legs wide open, and I said, "Sir, please close your legs," and his wife said, "Why?" It's magnificent. I tried to be professional, but I couldn't hold in my laughter. I said, "Magnificent where?" "Ma'am, if you think that's something magnificent you're missing out." Needless to say he closed his legs and let me do my job. Ex-fiance wanted to give back the timeshare my mother had given her 15 years previously. So, this is from a few years ago. I was engaged to S for a few years. When my dad died in the late 90s she was very supportive and my mother thought she was great. My parents had a really nice timeshare that they used quite a bit, but now my dad had died, my mum had no wish to keep it, so offered it to me. I had no wish to use it, so she offered it to S. S took the timeshare as it was closer to where her parents lived and they would make good use of it, it was all legally signed over to her etc. Anyways, about 6 months later me and S had a bit of a messy breakup and about a year later, one of our mutual friends was telling me S was trying to sell the timeshare for £20,000. This caused a row between S and our mutual friend as she argued that any money made from selling the timeshare should be given to my mother. I didn't really care and forgot all about it. Fast forward to my mum dying 10 years ago. About 2 weeks after her death I get a message from S on Facebook, but under her new married name Skig, how I was and telling me that her and her husband have been using it every year, but now they have no further use for it and would like to offer it back to me. I highlighted how it's ironic she got in touch now, as my mum had only just died, I found out. Later she found out from a friend of ours, she then highlighted that my mum would definitely have wanted me to have it back as part of my inheritance. So I decided to do some digging to find out why she was so keen for us to have it. It turned out, one, the annual fee had risen from £250 a year to £650 a year. They are impossible to sell. I looked on eBay, and people were trying to sell timeshares from this complex for 1 pence, they were that desperate to get out the contract. 3. A lot of the amenities that were in the timeshare complex were now run down, and from reading some of the reviews, the whole complex seemed to be poorly managed. I also found out she had been trying to sell it for years, but with no luck, so I let her know that I was very grateful for her offer, but had no interest in taking it back, and she was welcome to keep it. She sent about 10 messages over the next couple of weeks, trying to guilt trip me, and even contacted my sister as well, trying to convince her to take it back, but we both politely declined and she's now stuck with the place for life and the annual fee which rises every year. Edit, a couple of posters have asked what's the revenge. I didn't want to bore you all with the details of the breakup, but to summarize, she left me with a shitload of debt, tried to get me fired from my job and multiple other things. Nobody in my family had an issue with her trying to sell it, it was mutual friends who got annoyed with her as she was boasting to them how she was going to profit from a gift. She happily used it for years, and then when she found out my mother had passed, tried to fob it off back to me as she no longer used it and realized she was stuck with it for life, so she might have left me with thousands of pounds debt from our relationship, which took me several years to pay off, but I eventually got my revenge in the long run, as she will be paying for it for the rest of her life. My husband and I go to timeshare vacation club talks for sport. We are both on board about how awful they are, but we get some free stuff and a good laugh. Some of the games we have played pull out calculator and paper and start doing the math with them, playing a version of good cop bad cop, getting into an argument and then asking what happens if we get divorced, asked for a copy of the contract so we could have our attorney look it over before we signed it. They wouldn't do it but would let us take pictures of it to email it to said attorney. Due out a guy for being a chauvinist and refusing to deal with him anymore because he implied I would do the cooking. One of the best was when we acted so excited they thought they hooked us. We both went to the bathroom in separate areas. We came back to sign the paperwork and we looked at each and said no. Their mouths fell open in shock. We never go in with a plan, we just play along with each other. Funny thing is we have been to the same place for presentation several times. Each time they tell us this is our last chance. 2 years later they try again. We tell people go, get your free stuff, but always say no. Some of these timeshares are just plain predatory. My parents got suckered into one in the late 90s. You know the drill, free food and a free first trip to Mexico if they stay for a 90-minute presentation. They signed the deal. We used it twice that I can remember as a family before my parents managed to get an ex-family friend to buy out their contract. I went to Mexico with friends a few years ago and the location of the timeshare no longer exists, used to be a hotel, now it's a strip mall type thing. Oh, you're gonna call cops? BC 1/5 of my car is past the no parking sign, guess I'm gonna park there every day now. I usually park in my BF's driveway, but one day he washed his car so his car was in the center of the driveway. I parked a few houses down in front of a hedge not close to a mailbox for driveway. I didn't see the no parking sign till the next morning. I knew when I saw the ticket someone had to have called it in BC, it's far into a big suburban neighborhood on a Tuesday at the end of a cul-de-sac. Cops aren't just strolling around. Then I read the ticket and cop was like, hey, someone sent videos and pics, I had to ticket you. Like WTF, who cares, I'm not in front of a driveway or mailbox, the back fifth of my car was past the sign. So I knew which house called it in BC. I've been watching and they normally park their truck there. Well, I also learned I get off work about 30 minutes before, so now I park my car there and make sure it's in front of the sign every time I come over. The last time I parked there, the lady was blowing leaves in her driveway and looked livid. She made weird scoffing noise and just stood there while not leaf blowing and I faked a phone call. BC I was uncomfortable. Like I would never have parked there again. I always have a spot in my BF's driveway, but you had to call the cops on me. I've been thinking about calling in on my neighbors who always park on the wrong side of the road with signs saying no parking because they called in the house saying I hadn't sprayed my yard for weeds yet, though it's not a requirement. People called me saying exactly who reported me by being subtle. They said your neighbors in front of your house, which I live on a corner and there is only one house in front of mine. I told them I pull my weeds out because I have medical issues with herbicides and they told me they didn't understand the complaint because spraying is not required here, all that is required is that the weeds are dealt with, which they are. I'm feeling inspired by you now, that's dangerous. Why do people think that they own the public street in front of their house? Oh, this video has come to an end. If you want more such cool stories, then go to one of the many following videos.